He comes out a couple weeks ago and says you basically went behind his back to shop him and he didn't seem too pleased. From your perspective, how?
Certainly not true. And our inability to reach him or for him to respond in any way, I think at that point, then we just kind of I had to do my job.
You guys are going to have to forgive me because I kind of checked out of the Aaron Rodgers situation once he announced 2 weeks ago that he wanted to get traded to the New York Jets. And I thought that was it. I thought it would be simple. From here on out, within the next couple of days, we're going to hear officially that Aaron Rodgers will get traded to the New York Jets. But of course, with anything Aaron Rodgers related, nothing is simple. Things tend to get very complicated. And I'm not saying it's all Aaron Rodgers' fault, but you have to admit the man does have a bit of a track record of making very simple situations relatively complex. So before we get to the content, the day he does finally get traded, this is ridiculous. We're going to be giving away $120 to multiple of my followers that retweet this 2-week-old tweet on my Twitter. By the way, this was tweeted out after he made his announcement as a means for me to have an excuse to give you guys money. And the fact that he hasn't gotten traded yet is slightly embarrassing for me, and I will admit a little comical. Now that we get all that out of the way, Burk! Today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are over 70,000 events each and every day, from festivals to concerts to events to sporting events. And honestly, I feel significantly more comfortable purchasing a ticket off of SeatGeek because they literally tell you if you're getting a bad deal. Whenever you're on the app, make sure you're looking for the green dots next to a ticket that you're about to purchase, because that means you're getting a good deal, whereas if it was a red dot, that means you're getting a bad deal. And you guys know I came through for you guys because I have a promo code that'll get you $20 off of your first order. All you have to do is use my promo code Mikerophone to get $20 off of your first order. That's promo code Mikerophone to get $20 off of your first order at SeatGeek. And thank you, SeatGeek, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? For the first time in my career, I accurately predicted where Aaron Rodgers was going to go following this offseason. Well, kind of. It hasn't officially happened yet, but he did say verbally on the Pat McAfee show 2 weeks ago that he intends on playing football again and that he wants to play for the New York Jets.
I think since Friday, I made it clear that my intention was to play, and my intention was to play for the New York Jets.
To be honest, historically, whenever instances like this occur, you would see the trade being worked out relatively quickly. For example, when Tom Brady announced that he's signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Rob Gronkowski came out of retirement to join him, Rob Gronkowski was technically still a member of the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots traded him to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers instantaneously. This might be a detail that you guys may have forgotten because it happened so quickly and very, very under the table. But Rob Gronkowski was traded alongside a 7th round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a 4th round pick. There wasn't necessarily a haggling over his value. It was very quick. The moment he said he's coming out of retirement, he was practically a Buccaneer immediately. Most of us even thought he was a free agent at the time. That's how quick it happened. He even came out and said that he was going to honor his contract at the time pending a physical, which he did, and eventually he got a nice little pay increase once his contract expired. And I'm not saying that the Green Bay Packers or Aaron Rodgers are doing something wrong at this point, but I am going to say that this is a very peculiar situation. The way I like approaching all of these types of disagreements is I like bringing you the perspective from both sides. And in this case, it's going to be from the perspective of the New York Jets and the perspective of the Green Bay Packers in regards to Aaron Rodgers' trade value. But that's not the only thing we're going to be discussing here today. We're going to be discussing how ugly things are getting between Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. As a matter of fact, this is kind of reminding me of the 2021 offseason. You know, the offseason when Aaron Rodgers consistently threatened to retire unless if the Green Bay Packers fired Brian Gutekunst. He listed a whole series of players that Aaron Rodgers was attached to that Brian Gutekunst let go of, like Randall Cobb, Jay Kumaro, Julius Peppers. And then the conclusion of it all was Aaron Rodgers pulling up to training camp and giving this whole 30-minute interview where he buried all of the Green Bay Packers front office. And then the Packers proceeded to have a pretty good good season where Aaron Rodgers would win MVP. And at that point, you would think that Aaron Rodgers would decide to move on. This was his final season with Davante Adams because Davante Adams would get traded in the offseason last year. And at this point, it would make sense because Jordan Love has sat down behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 seasons, and it seemed like the team was clearly in transition. They were in salary cap hell, and they clearly were not going to contend for a Super Bowl after trading for Davante Adams and bringing in a bunch of new wide receivers that needed to establish chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. But for some reason, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers decided to run it back for one more season. And this really didn't screw over Aaron Rodgers that much because I think he's very content with the career he's had, and it seems very obvious whenever he conducts interviews. But it definitely did screw over the Green Bay Packers, and I don't really know what they were thinking at this point because the Green Bay Packers did have offers to trade Aaron Rodgers for multiple first-round picks last year. The Denver Broncos essentially built a team around the idea of getting Aaron Rodgers. This was something that was in the making for 2 years. Aaron Rodgers was rumored to be going to the Denver Broncos for 2 whole seasons, 2 whole off seasons. But you think the Denver Broncos woke up one day and decided to hire Nathaniel Hackett out of nowhere? Well, ultimately, the Green Bay Packers would decide to run it back with Aaron Rodgers for 1 more season. And since Aaron Rodgers didn't win an MVP for the 3rd straight year, and since he's 39 years old now, and since he came out and point blank said that he was 90% close to retirement, at this point, his value clearly took a hit. At this point, a team that is trading for Aaron Rodgers would not be getting 3 or 4 years of Aaron Rodgers. Rather, you'd be getting 1 or 2 years of Aaron Rodgers. And as a result, there's a huge debate about what Aaron Rodgers' trade value is. You're hearing so many contradictions on all sides from the entire situation. For example, common theory suggests that the Green Bay Packers want a first-round pick for Aaron Rodgers' services, probably because they could have gotten 2 first-round picks if they traded him last offseason. But it doesn't even seem like that's going to be feasible at this point. As a matter of fact, Mike Florio went on the Pat McAfee show and said this.
That the Packers were adamant on getting the 13th overall pick in this year's draft, and I think they backed away from that.
So you could officially take that off of the board. I would be shocked if the 13th overall pick was ever on the table to begin with. But here's the thing that kind of opened my eyes about this entire situation. Things are getting really ugly between the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And it's very interesting because there is a clear theme here. You guys remember a while ago when Aaron Rodgers was asked if he was vaccinated and he said this?
Are you vaccinated, and what's your stance on vaccinations?
Yeah, I've been immunized.
Which, by the way, was one of the funnier moments in NFL history, in my opinion. I'm not going to sit here and say,
why didn't you get vaccinated, Aaron? You're a horrible human being.
But trying to finesse the media that way was hysterical, in my opinion. But Aaron Rodgers pretty much tried to do the same thing again. At least that's what the Packers are claiming. Because 2 weeks ago, when Aaron Rodgers announced that he wanted to join the New York Jets, he went on the Pat McAfee show and said this.
When I came out of the darkness, something changed. I'm not exactly sure what that was, but something changed. I just think I wish that in the beginning of the offseason, that had been the conversation.
And believe me, Aaron Rodgers would go quite some time discussing how he felt betrayed by the Green Bay Packers.
Because I love direct communication. If they had just said, listen, we think it's time to move in a different direction, and we love you, I would have said, man, thank you so much just for telling me that. Like, I really, really appreciate that.
First things first, guys, you know how much I look up to Pat McAfee and how he's one of my favorite content creators, but in this particular instance, I really wish he would have asked if Aaron Rodgers was contacted by the Green Bay Packers. Did they even attempt to reach Aaron Rodgers? But he just moved on to the next question when Aaron Rodgers said that he was never notified about the situation. See how Aaron Rodgers is very clever with his wordplay? When he was asked about vaccination, he said,
I've been immunized.
And then he goes on to the Pat McAfee show and claims that he was never notified that the Packers wanted to move on from him. And to be honest, man, again, you don't need to necessarily be a genius to know that it's in the Packers' best interest to move on from Aaron Rodgers at that point. I mean, they tried for 1 more season. Clearly, they aren't contenders with him under center. It's not necessarily his fault, but it's for the best for both sides to move on. It's best for Aaron Rodgers to move on to a team that quite literally has every weapon that he would want offensively and has a stacked defense. And at the same time, it's in the Green Bay Packers' best interest to see whether or not Jordan Love is their quarterback of the future and whether or not they should pick up his 5th-year option because his rookie contract is about to expire. So you don't necessarily need to be a genius to figure that part out. But the fact that Aaron Rodgers suggests that the Green Bay Packers never reached out to him is really interesting. And I will admit, if this is true, it's quite unprofessional. But here's here's the thing. Brian Gutekunst says that's not necessarily what happened. And what I think is really interesting about this entire situation is I think we're seeing Aaron Rodgers and Brian Gutekunst go to war with one another kind of in a similar way as they did in the 2021 offseason, where Aaron Rodgers said that if the Green Bay Packers don't fire Brian Gutekunst as the general manager, Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. If you guys remember, this was the 2021 NFL offseason when Aaron Rodgers listed all the horrible atrocities that Gutekunst committed, such as drafting Jordan Love, and most importantly, the fact that he was frustrated that he wasn't involved in personnel decisions. Now, why is this important? Well, the Green Bay Packers don't go on the Pat McAfee show and let their feelings be known. We only get Aaron Rodgers' side to the story, but now we're beginning to see some of the Green Bay Packers' side of the entire story, which is really funny because technically speaking, Aaron Rodgers is still a Green Bay Packer. But here's an example. In regards to the personnel issues and wanting to be more involved, Green Bay Packers tried to figure out a means to allow Aaron Rodgers to be more involved. As a matter of fact, their head coach, Matt LaFleur, would have game plan meetings to give Aaron Rodgers more say. And sometimes Aaron Rodgers would show up to the meeting, and other times he would just leave Matt LaFleur there by himself. Check it out.
Rodgers and LaFleur would have game plan meetings, obviously common practice, to give Rodgers more say. And there would be multiple times where Rodgers would show up, and then there would be a lot of other times where Rodgers would just leave Matt LaFleur hanging in the meeting room, and then Matt LaFleur would eventually realize, oh, he's not showing up, and he would keep LaFleur guessing. That relationship between Rodgers and LaFleur, where you have meetings where they're giving you more say, and sometimes you show up, and other times, yeah, I'm just gonna leave him there, keep him guessing. That's just not a good look for Aaron Rodgers.
Now, this is pretty funny because the entire 2021 offseason was Aaron Rodgers complaining about the fact that he wasn't involved in personnel decisions. By the way, it wasn't just him complaining about it in the 2021 offseason. If you remember, Russell Wilson was complaining about it, Deshaun Watson was complaining about it. It was like a universal complaint of multiple superstar quarterbacks because they saw Tom Brady leave the New England Patriots, join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, create his dream team, and overrule some of his coach's wishes, like Bruce Arians didn't want Antonio Brown on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it didn't really matter because Tom Brady got Antonio Brown on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers anyway, so it does make sense. This is consistent with the 2021 offseason. Now, it's not just that. On top of that, Brian Gutekunst is straight up claiming that Aaron Rodgers is lying in this particular instance. Well, I guess technically not lying. He's just not telling the whole truth, if you get what I'm saying. He's leaving out some very crucial details, which is pretty funny at this point if you ask me. Because when Matt Schneidman caught up to him and interviewed Brian Gutekunst, he asked some incredible questions. I mean, this is peak journalism, and a huge shout out to Matt Schneidman for these questions. He's an awesome reporter. Check this out.
He comes out a couple weeks ago and says you basically went behind his back to shop him and he didn't seem too pleased. From your perspective, how did the last couple months kind of transpire?
Yeah, I didn't really take his comments like that, and it's certainly not true. I mean, I think, as we got out of the off season or after the season, and we had a good conversation, and then we're going to have some follow-up conversations. And our inability to reach him or for him to respond in any way, I think at that point, then we just kind of I had to do my job and kind of reach out and understanding that a trade could be possible and see who was interested. But that shopping was never really part of that.
But that's not the only thing that is interesting about this interview. Brian Gutekunst even suggests that there may have been a future for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Check it out.
You've said publicly your intention was for him to not just play last season, to play beyond that. At what point did it shift to, okay, we need to move on?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously it was a disappointing season, right? And you come out of the season, you have a lot of conversations, not only with Aaron, but with the rest of the team, coaches, and everybody. And as you go through that process, you kind of get an idea of where you're going to move to, as a team, how you're going to go forward. And I think I was really looking forward to the conversations with Aaron to see how he fit into that. Those never transpired. So, there came a time where we kind of had to make some, decisions. So we went through his representatives to try to kind of talk to him where we were going with our team. And at that point, they informed us they would like to be traded to the Jets.
But you just said you did try and reach out to have those conversations, what you said. Okay.
Aaron Rodgers is telling us one part of the story, not necessarily the full picture, and Brian Gutekunst is out here clearing it up. You're also hearing things about the Green Bay Packers doing whatever it took to appease Aaron Rodgers. I mean, after all, they did make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. They gave him an opportunity to be involved in personnel decisions. They traded for Randall Cobb almost immediately following the 2021 offseason. I think the Green Bay Packers did right by Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, I'm just saying, and I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is a horrible person, because after all, we've had a lot of fun covering him on this channel, but I do think that we're not necessarily getting the full story, and there's two sides to every story. At the end of the day, however, I think this situation's especially awkward because you have the Green Bay Packers attempting to trade Aaron Rodgers, and it's been 2 weeks and no trade has happened yet. The latest we know about this situation is the fact that, one, the Green Bay Packers don't necessarily need a first-round pick. Two, there's no timeline on trading Aaron Rodgers. And three, there's not necessarily a means for Aaron Rodgers to play for the Green Bay Packers again, but all options are on the table. It's really funny because like under this is this really funny meme of Joe Douglas passing a Packers fan a note saying you're not getting pick 13. I think it's very unrealistic to get pick 13. I'm gonna be honest. Again, like a year ago, 2 years ago, when you're trading a player that is coming off of an MVP season, I wouldn't think it's a good decision, but I do think you'd have enough momentum to get yourself a first round pick, or hell, even 2 first round picks. And if the Green Bay Packers did that last season, I would have applauded them. I would have thought it was a brilliant move. But here's the thing, it's very difficult for these teams at times to move on from a player that is coming off of an MVP season, especially back-to-back MVP seasons. So I could understand, I guess, why they didn't do it, but you can't have buyer's remorse about your decision, because now 33% or 25% or hell, even 50% of the games that Aaron Rodgers would have played on his new team are now gone. So you're not going to get the 13th overall pick in this year's NFL draft for a 39-year-old quarterback that said repeatedly he doesn't want to have a Tom Brady-like career that might only play for maybe 2 seasons or 1 season and then move on. That's just not the way it works. And I still think second-round picks are a remarkable return for Aaron Rodgers, who is 39 years old, might play 1 to 2 more seasons, maybe 3 seasons at best, and it'll give you additional assets to build around Jordan Love. So we're still waiting on the announcement of Aaron Rodgers getting traded. So let me know what you guys think about this entire situation. Are you on Aaron Rodgers' side, or are you on the Green Bay Packers side? Whose side do you believe more? And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.